Welcome to our session on the issues associated with the risk in the agricultural sector and how farmers can do a better job of managing that risk. We want to visit with you about a project we have here at Purdue, which we, in our Center for Commercial Agriculture, which we think will be really valuable in helping you think about the challenges and opportunities in managing your business in these increasingly turbulent times. I'm Mike Boehlje in the Center for Commercial Agriculture, and with me is Beth Yeager, and I'll let you introduce yourself briefly.
Thanks, Mike. I'm Beth Yeager, and I'm a faculty member in the Department of Agricultural Economics at Purdue and associated with the Center for Commercial Agriculture. And my work is in the areas of risk management for firms and agribusinesses.
So Beth is coordinating this project that we have a number of us here in the center involved in. Beth, let's just have a brief conversation about this risk area and the challenges we have in the agricultural sector. Certainly we've got a lot of volatility right now in the short run, but risk is longer term as well. So why don't you kind of set us up in terms of some of the challenges and opportunities we have in this area?
So Mike, as we think about the risk and risk management, it's really difficult for most of us to think about or discuss risk. So it's challenging to try and identify all the particular vulnerabilities that our firms face. Thinking about recently the increase in input costs, higher land values, higher cash rent, and also the commodity price swings. So as we have all this increased volatility, we also have seen an increase in wealth for many of our farmers, higher incomes in recent years, and so trying to manage that and protect that during the times of volatility.
Well, the amount of risk we have in agriculture is really larger than it has been in the past, more intense than it has in the past, and it's got many more dimensions than we sometimes think about.
Yes.
We always have a tendency to maybe think about risk in a fairly narrow perspective and think about markets and prices and various strategies to reduce the risk associated with commodity prices and yields, crop insurance, et cetera. But there's actually a broader set of risk in this industry, and that's probably a place to start in this conversation.
That's right. So one of the main focuses of our project is strategic risk. So as you've discussed, most of the time we think of operational risk or business risk, and this is still really important and something that we need to consider and address in our work, but this area of strategic risk is something that hasn't maybe been adequately addressed in the past, and that I think we can really add to with our work.
And in the context of strategic risk, let's put it in the broader framework of the other types of risk we have. So as we kind of think about it from the perspective of a businessman trying to figure out how to run their operations, we sometimes think of three boxes.
That's
or
right.
Three areas,
Yep.
Business risk, financial risk, and strategic risk.
That's right.
So in the business risk area, we're talking about all the things that might influence in the shorter term some of the income of your business. So yield risk, risk associated with weather events, casualty risk associated with, say, a hail or some kind of fire event, liability risk, those risks that might be associated with price volatility, both on the cost as well as the price side in terms of the commodity side. So that's the kind of standard area that we work about and think about. And then we've got the second area of risk that we sometimes spend some time thinking about is financial risk. So what's that include?
So with financial risk, we're worried about their working capital. So oftentimes when farms are facing maybe one of the other risks that you've discussed already, business risk, it's important that they have a number of liquid assets that they can, or a set aside working capital that they can cover some of their risk. And so making sure that they have an adequate level of working capital or liquidity. Incomplete budgeting. So it's important when you're evaluating the finances of your business or looking at different purchasing options or maybe some diversification or expansion, that you do a complete budget and not just a partial budget, and really identify your investments. Also the use of debt and leveraging. So this can be really valuable and helpful, but in terms of risk, it can also really magnify your losses when you're highly leveraged.
And that's certainly something that we seem to be pretty cognizant of right now in terms of some of the issues that people are thinking about as they're buying farmland, maybe borrowing money to buy that farmland, maybe paying a fairly high price for that farmland. So the whole issue of what the fixed costs are associated with that, and therefore the lack of flexibility they have if prices were to decline and costs go up and margins get compressed. And actually, Beth, if you think about that, we maybe don't fully appreciate that in the livestock sector, they've lived through this.
They have,
right?
Yes. It's been a little bit different for the corn and soybean farmers in recent years.
It might not be a bad idea for some of our grain farmers to talk to some of their friends in the livestock business to understand the risk associated with that financial side of that business as well.
And both the business and financial risk, Mike, most of the time there are tools that we can use to manage these risks. So insurance, using futures or options help to manage some of these risks. But as we get into the strategic risk, that there's less that we can do, or maybe less that the traditional methods that we've used to manage risk aren't as effective.
And those strategic risks are risks that we sometimes have a tendency to try to ignore because we can't, manage them very well. But they include things like, for example, changes in government policy that might influence your business, regulatory rules that might change how you operate, maybe relationship risk like losing a landlord. Somebody bids that land away from you, or losing a relationship with one of your potential buyers that's been a really, really strong buyer of your product.
So it sounds like many of these are external as well, right? So
that's
they're things that are more difficult for us to predict.
That's right. Not only external to the business, but to your very point, things we just don't have a lot of control over.
Right.
And one of the challenges that we have is how do we kind of position our business to be able to kind of respond to those, maybe not mitigate them, but maybe do things that will be even avoid them in some cases. So we may choose not to be involved in certain businesses because the risk is just too high. Those are some of the really important strategic choices we have to make. And then on top of that, we have to worry about the fact that we may be well positioned for today's business climate, but the business climate changes,
for tomorrow.
And now we have to reposition our business, and that's a strategic risk that we have to be very cognizant of and be very concerned about. So our project is going to look at this whole set of risk in these kind of three bundles, but we're going to spend at least the early phase of our work focusing on some of these longer term types of risk. Is that correct?
That's right, Mike. So our focus right now is on the strategic risk initiative. So as Mike said, we're going to have a series of videos, a series of materials that are going to help farmers and managers become more aware of the risks they face, help them to use sound risk management practices. So we know that there's a lot of information out there and available, but we want to be the first source, the first resource when looking for information. We want to help.
And just to reemphasize, there's a lot of information available, but it's really typically focused more on the business and financial area.
That's right.
And what we're going to try to do is flesh out in more detail the strategic risk side of this so that they have a better understanding of that, including a number of case studies and other things which we'll talk about in a second, correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
So as we are putting together our case studies, our conceptual materials, we're trying to build educational experiences. So through our website, through delivery methods, we're going to assist farmers in identifying risks that they may face on their farms, and then most importantly, work with them so that they're able to actually implement risk management practices on their farms. So whether it's identifying new strategies that they may want to use, or just getting a better understanding of what they're currently doing to manage their risks. So as we're helping to create these educational experiences, we're really focusing on conceptual materials. So providing a basic groundwork, some framework on risk management,
Okay.
primarily in the strategic risk area, but also building up some of the business risk and financial risk that we discussed as well.
Okay.
We're writing case studies, so we have a series of case studies based on farms in Indiana where we're identifying risks that they've faced. So these include relationship risk, diversification, looking at expanding the business, bringing family members back to the business, whether it's time to exit or downscope out of some areas, and then also looking at for livestock operations. So is it, how do they manage their inputs? Should they, some of them have historically raised their own feed, their own grain for production. Should they be raising their own replacement heifers in the case of dairy operations, for hog operations, looking at contracts, how that works. And then also using farmer vignettes. So we have these case studies, but sometimes it's more useful to look at very specific examples. So just a short story, also getting interviews with farmers. So hearing their perspective on what's worked for them, maybe what hasn't worked, and just providing new ideas, or maybe reframing some previous ideas, providing examples.
Well, it sounds like one of the things I think we continue to try to talk about is something we sometimes refer to as integrated risk management.
That's
what we're trying to do is we're trying to take and think about holistically this business and think about it not only in terms of the short-term issues associated with volatility of income prices, et cetera, but longer term in terms of even critical choices associated with diversification and flexibility and all sorts of ways to organize your business to reduce its risk exposure as well. Now, we have a website that's up.
We do. So our website, you can access it through the Center for Commercial Agriculture webpage. You can go to the risk management link, and we encourage you to sign up. So there's a form on there for you to sign up, receive more information. We'll send periodic emails with updates as materials added, but also check out what we have on the website so far. So our case studies, conceptual methods, short articles, videos are all housed on our risk management page.
And as we kind of move forward to this project, there'll be continual updates on that website. Additional materials are going to be available on that. And longer term, we'll
be hosting webinars. We'll be having enrollment sessions where people can come to campus or another location and go through a program. We'll have a workbook that comprises the materials and then work through the whole process of risk management for your farm.
Well, this is an exciting project for Beth and I and others to be working on, and we're really thinking that we're going to be able to do something worthwhile that'll help you do a better job managing the risk in your business. So check out the website, keep it on your radar screen so that you can regularly check and see what the new information is. And we look forward to having you interact with us in the webinars as well as in some of the workshops we have. We'll have opportunities to help you, we think, do a better job of managing the risk in your business. Thanks, Beth, and we'll look forward to having them in some of our sessions.
Thanks, Mike.
You bet.